Welcome to the Mentor Podcast, where the most highly motivated entrepreneurs come to get their weekly dose of financial stability with host Ron LeGrand, as well as other nationally recognized thought leaders who will teach you how to get, grow, and protect your wealth.
Well, hello, everybody. Ron LeGrand back with another episode of the Mentor Podcast, designed to help you make more money and keep more of it and retire rich. And I have a very special guest for you today. His name is Kevin Bupp, and man, does he got the experience. This guy has done over $150 million worth of real estate transactions, branching over all kinds of commercial deals, including mobile home parks, which is going to be our subject matter for the day, and one that I'm kind of partial to myself. So I'm actually interested to hear how Kevin handles these things. So without any further ado, Kevin, give a little bit of your background if you can.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Ron, I appreciate you having me on the show. Very much an honor to be here. And something I'd like to mention before I give the background is that I actually got my start from you, Ron. I didn't tell you that in the beginning here. You don't know anything about me, but I know about you. And 20 years ago, I came to a boot camp. It was my very first introduction to real estate down in Philadelphia. And that literally has led me to where I'm at today. Yeah, so thank you.
Well, did you ever send me a letter?
I don't think I did, Ron. I actually didn't, but I spoke about you many different times over the years, and have probably mentioned your name a million different times on podcasts, and it's part of my story.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, but you are aware it's federal law. You got to send me a letter when you do good.
We'll do. It's not too late, right? It's never too late.
No, it's not too late, man. But all right, we got limited time, so let's get going here.
Yeah, let's get rolling.
Look, you've done a little bit of everything here in the commercial world, as have I. In fact, I happen to own a mobile home park with one of my students right now up in Indiana, so kind of partial to them. So you've done office buildings, single family houses, apartments, buildings, and condos and other stuff. Why mobile home parks?
Yeah, there's as we all know, there's a huge demand for affordable housing in this country, and that's always been our focus, Ron, whether it be single family, multifamily. We've always focused on the affordable housing realm as it pertains to residential real estate. And I got turned on to mobile home parks about 6 years ago, a little more than 6 years ago, and just some of the interesting aspects of them just piqued my interest enough to where I wanted to dig a little deeper. The fact that they're not making them anymore, the amount that actually get redeveloped or torn down and shut down every year is greater than the number that get brought new onto the market, and so it's got a diminishing supply, which means big barrier to entry for me. It also feels it's a great way to fill the void in the affordable housing space. So it offers a great product for those folks that are in the $30,000 to $40,000 combined household income range, that are looking for something that isn't a low end apartment complex to live in. They want to also live that American dream and own a home of their own and have a roof over their head in a nice, clean, safe, and quiet community. So there's a number of things that were very intriguing to me. That really drew me into the space, at least enough to where we bought a community years and years ago and just wanted to either prove or disprove the concept, and bought a mobile home community up in Atlanta, really run down, bad reputation, lots of crime, lots of drugs, lots of squatters. It was a really rough place, and we took about 8 months to turn that thing fully around, and we still own it today. And that was kind of my first taste. Saw the opportunity, I believed in it at that point in time, and just decided that I wanted to put all my focus into that. Niche.
Sure.
I've always liked to pick one thing and focus, become an expert at it. And just happens to be mobile home parks today.
Well, good. In fact, what you just described is the kind of park that I'd buy. One that needs turned around, piece of crap.
Yeah.
In fact, I bulldoze everything off of it and start all over. And of course, that immediately changed the reputation, and you get new rents in there and change the whole thing around. Exactly what we're doing up in the one in Indiana, for that matter. So, when do you own the trailers or just the park?
In a perfect world, we wouldn't own any of the trailers, Ron. But you and I both know we don't live in a perfect world, and so throughout our portfolio, I think we probably have about 150 or so units. Some communities that we own don't own any of the trailers whatsoever, and then other communities we might own 20 or 30. A few communities where we own more than others, and again, the number kind of changes on a regular basis. We continually buy. We ultimately try to sell those trailers off when we acquire them, but we buy more communities that ultimately have these park-owned homes in them. So we don't seem to ever be able to fully get away from owning the units.
Well, largely because they come with the parks, don't they?
That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
So you just get rid of the junk and you keep the ones that are savable because, I mean, it's true. You get a lot more rent out of it if you're putting somebody in the wobbly blocks and not just in the land. I get that. Of course, then you got to do the repairs on it. So that's the downside.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll try to get out of it. We'll do some creative financing, do a rent to own or a lease with an option to buy to ultimately try to find someone that wants to be a homeowner. They want to own that unit because you're right. I mean,
right.
The maintenance required and the actual management intensity is much greater in a community when you've got a lot of the rental units, when you're maintaining the roofs and the plumbing and the ACs and all that. And so again, in a perfect world, we wouldn't own any of the actual trailers, but that's not the case.
You know what we're doing up in Indiana, and it might interest you, Kevin. We're slowly, well, first of all, we cleaned off most of the junk, but there's still some on this 72 unit park. And we're putting new mobile homes on there that the factory is even financing. And of course, we're renting them out immediately. And the whole goal is to put almost all new ones on there and then sell the whole thing off with almost all new trailers on there at the highest income that we can get it. The numbers look pretty good on that. It's taking a lot longer than I would anticipate it. But on the other hand, I told my partners when they bought this thing, you can double the time frame and triple the grief. And sure enough, I was right. But when it's all said and done, we get that check, it won't be that hard. So,
sure.
Listen.
Yeah, no, we do that exact program. Yeah. I'm guessing that you probably use the 21st mortgage program. So yeah, we do bring new homes in our communities as well when there's empty spaces and, even sometimes just to refresh a community. So if we've got a community that's got a lot of old units, very old junky units, it's in a great market, great location, we'll slowly refresh in that inventory and we'll take out the old, bring in the new, just to, again, bring it up to today's standards more than anything else and attract a higher end clientele.
Right. So your goal, though, is to just buy these things for the cash flow. Is that correct?
That's correct. Don't we all love cash flow, Ron?
Well, yeah, of course. And of course, cash flow is an easy thing to sell, too, isn't it? When you do get ready to liquidate, and you will. In fact, how many units would you say you own altogether? I mean, pads is what I mean.
Yeah, we're just shy of 2,000. We sold some parks last year, so we were over that threshold. We just dropped back below it, and ultimately have another couple hundred in contract here right now. And so that's over 18 communities right now, and we're in 11 different states.
So, well, you're a Florida boy, so you branched out and you're all over the country then, huh?
Yeah, I wish that we could buy in our backyard. It'd be great to have everything here in Florida, but for the quality that we want, the prices and the returns just aren't there. And so we've got to venture out into other states and other markets to really get the returns we're looking for.
So I can understand that. So you're going to probably put all these things together, and my guess is you're going to sell them all off to one entity, aren't you? Is that the plan?
That's one of the potential exit strategies. That is one. We've got multiple different funds that we've raised over the years of how we buy these. So we do private placements, and we do an underneath a fund type structure. And so we have a fund that has 5 parks in it. We have another fund that has 8 parks in it, and then another fund that has the remainder parks in it. And so we intend to continue buying and building our portfolio. And ultimately, we do have to provide an exit at some point in the future for our investors. And it just really depends on what the opportunities are at that point in time. But surely selling off to one larger operator, whether it's one of the publicly traded companies or one of the many larger institutional players that are jumping into the space, that surely is one of the options for us.
Well, you make a note right now that Ron predicts that's exactly what you're going to do. and then you'll be so filthy, stinking rich, we'll have to make an appointment to even get near you.
I don't think so.
Have to talk to your secretary to even, never mind anyway. All right. Well, listen, I know when we talk about mobile home parks, you know what everybody's thinking. Oh, my God, we got to deal with the crap of the earth and nothing but tenant problems and headaches constantly. So, all right, give me your comments on that.
Yeah, I think that can be the case, and I like to give the comparison of you can go into any market in the U.S. and let's talk about residential homes, right? In different types of neighborhoods. You've got the war zone type neighborhoods that you wouldn't send your worst enemy into at night, and you've got the A class neighborhoods with the white collar folks living in homes. So you've got everything in between, right? The same thing exists in mobile home parks. You've got the really rundown, junky trailer parks that are crime ridden and just infested with bad people. And then you've got some really nice high-end communities that have palm tree lined streets with 3 swimming pools and activities directors. And then you've got everything in the middle, right? So we typically like to play in the middle sandbox. And, although we do take over communities that have challenges and struggles, sometimes they have some riffraff in them that we have to get rid of. They're in good markets. They're in good school districts. We know that the demand is there, that we can kick out the bad and bring in the new. And so the challenges that we face when we buy a community, we know that we can eradicate the problems and then bring in, good quality folks that want to pay their bills. And I found that they're actually much easier to manage if you have a tight ship, right? If you run a tight ship, these things are easier to manage than that of a comparable grade apartment complex. And so, and I've owned apartment complexes, and so they're not. I find much easier, much more efficient to manage.
Well, that is the key word. That's management. And of course, you could say the same thing applies to buying apartment complexes. You still have the same issues. You got to turn them around, get rid of the riffraff, and that's how you build the value in these things. And it doesn't take much of an increase in the net profit to increase the value considerably. So that's what this game is all about, I guess. So what would you say is, I don't know, a normal size park for you to buy, and where would you suggest that someone getting into the mobile home park business start?
Yeah, there's a couple factors we look at. I mean, our minimum size has kind of crept up over the years just due to, efficiencies and, our time and resources spent on a smaller park versus a larger park. So we used to buy things as small as maybe 40 lots. Now it's about double that size is what we'll really spend time looking at. So 80 lots or larger, preferably bigger. The bigger, the better. They're easier to finance. There's much greater impact when you turn around these things operationally when they're larger. If you do incremental lot rent increases, much larger impact when it's a larger park, obviously. But with that being said, one of the things that we looked at when we got into the business and what we kind of preach to others is, ideally, you want to have an on-site manager. They don't necessarily have to live there, but you want to have someone that kind of handles the day-to-day, the rent collecting, the handing out late notices, dealing with vendors, overseeing renovations, and we have those going on. Just get all the day-to-day operations. And I have found, and this could vary from market to market, with just using kind of like a average lot rent of like $300 a month. Some markets are higher, some are lower, but just using that across the board, that you really need the revenue from like a 40 space park to be able to justify having that part-time or full-time manager there on site. Sure. You get what you pay for. If you're going to expect that you're going to pay someone, minimum wage and only, get them for 10 hours a week or 10 hours a month to run your park, then you're going to get what you pay for. And so to get someone that's half decent quality, that knows how to use a computer, that can communicate well, that's what we found. You can typically afford that person with about 40 spaces.
Sure. Just like apartments, got to have enough to make it mathematical make sense. All right,
and then there's some other factors involved there as well. Like if you buy a mobile home park that's on septic systems, having if you had a 15 space park and you had a septic go out to where you had to replace a leach field and a tank and it's going to cost you $7,500, the impact to the cash flows of that community will probably be catastrophic on an annual basis if you had one of those big repairs go bad during that that given year. Whereas in a 40 space park, it can absorb it a little bit easier. Still might be a pretty catastrophic event, but it surely can absorb that $7,000 repair bill a lot easier than the 15 space park might be able to.
Okay, so how do you go about financing these things? Do you use bank money, seller financing, or a combination of the both? Private money, what?
All the above. We always push for owner financing. Every situation is a little different. We do have a number of parks we own that have been seller carryback. A lot of it really just depends on the seller's end goal. Like, do they have a plan for the money? Are they going to miss that income stream? Right. So it has to fit into their the next phase of their life. But we always push for that. But we finance them every other way that you could think of. I mean, local bank debt or credit union type debt, regional debt. We've done CMBS loans, and we've also done agency debt, which is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So again, all the above. It just really depends on the type of community, kind of what the value add strategy is, and what we intend to do in coming years with that community.
So what kind of loan to value ratio are you getting out of these parks when you buy them from a lending institution?
Yeah, typically between, I'd say 65 on the low end and 75 on the high end. 75 is, I'd say, would be more of an anomaly. And that would be a much more stabilized, larger, institutional grade type community. And then the heavier value add stuff would be, closer to the probably 65, maybe 68%, something like that. But that's kind of the norm that we see. We got a loan right now that we just wrapped up with Fannie Mae that was 75%. Very stabilized park, just operating really well. Doesn't really need much as far as capex improvements, and they gave us 75% on that.
Okay, so will they finance a park before it is stabilized, or you have to get it stabilized first?
Who's that? Fannie Mae?
Well, and frankly, any of these financial lenders.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, they will. And I think a lot of it, depends on the borrower and their experience. If they've got a track record of doing these turnarounds, how much liquidity they have personally, to support this thing should it go south. But yeah, to answer the question in a general sense, absolutely.
So you're successful in getting loans even when the park is not ready to support the loans yet.
That's correct. And now, so we have to dig a little deeper into how you ask that question. I mean, if you're going to buy a mobile home park that literally has no revenue whatsoever because it's got 100 lots, but there's only 10 homes in the park, different story. I know that would be like that. But with that being said, we've actually done bridge loans as well. I mean, in instances like that, to where there's, we kind of map out the business plan. We can see that we can execute it within 2 years, and it might not have that the debt coverage ratio to qualify for traditional financing today. We just did a bridge loan on 2 parks last year that neither one will qualify for the type of debt we're looking for today. But we put a bridge loan in place, put a lot of money back into, and they'll be stabilized here in the next 18 months.
Well, that's actually the perfect opportunity to get 100% seller financing with a short term on it, 2 or 3 years, so you can get it stabilized and then go to the bank and refinance it, which is not very difficult to get the sellers to take, because frankly, they don't have a whole lot of choice when it's down and out like that. I mean, I bought apartment complexes. I'd rather have them vacant, but there ain't no sense of trying to go into any institution and get the money because they don't even want to hear about it. So in your case, when you borrow this money from an institution, will they accept the seller carrying back the entire balance, or you have to bring skin in the game?
We've got to bring skin in the game. Yeah, and honestly, I can't tell you that I've ever actually even had a situation where the seller was willing to carry back the entire balance. And normally we don't. Maybe I've never pushed that issue enough. But either way, I can tell you that the lenders we've dealt with, whether they're local, regional, or these larger, CMBS or agency lenders, they want to know that you've got skin in the game. Something. They want to know that you have something at risk in the event you can't pull off the business plan.
Got it. Are you sure they want your skin? Because I back before the crash, I bought a lot of properties where the seller took an entire second back for the balance, but that was before the crash. So I know times are a little different right now. That's the reason I'm quizzing you like this, man. I bought a lot of stuff before the crash too, and it was definitely a lot more flexible with creative strategies like that. And that's not to say that I can tell you that relationships go a long way, especially when it comes to like local banks. When it comes to a local bank and you've got a relationship and it's a local bank to you, to where you're based, and maybe done some other loans with them, I can tell you that it's much more relationship based than it is black and white. And so I'm not saying that it's not possible. Everything's possible, and I think what you're mentioning there would be more possible and more feasible with a local bank than it would be with some of these larger institutional grade lenders. Now, when you buy these things, is each of their own LLC, or how do you take title to them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Every park that we buy gets a brand new LLC in that respective state that the community is located in. That way it doesn't have any track record, doesn't have any historicals to it. It's nice and clean slate, and then also it kind of isolates that community from our holding company and isolates it from the other communities. So if something catastrophic could occur, or slip and fall, or some type of lawsuit was brought on one community, it won't create a domino effect and come down on our other communities.
Yes. At one time I had 32 developments going on simultaneously in 9 different states before '08. And another big advantage that I'm going to tell our listeners buying these things in an LLC. When you get a loan from the bank, they finance the LLC. You only personally guarantee it, but your name does not show anywhere on your credit report. And in fact, you don't even have to report it on your financial statement because it is not your debt. So all loans carry their own in their LLC. But anyway, I'm glad to see that you do that. So you never put more than one egg in one basket, is what you're saying?
No. Even when we buy a community that has park-owned homes, so if we're buying a 100-lot mobile home park, and let's say it's got 50 resident-owned homes and 50 park-owned homes, we actually create a separate home entity for those rental units, for those rental trailers, just because they carry their own set of liability aside from the park itself. So in a situation like that, we'd have two LLCs.
Got it. Makes sense, actually. So when you do you sell any of your trailers off with owner financing?
Yeah, we try to as fast as possible. And we don't use owner financing only due to the SAFE Act, Dodd-Frank, and the limitations that that has put into place as far as truly carrying financing and creating paper. There's a few larger operators in our industry over the years that have kind of created an evolution of the rent to own, what you and I might know as a rent to own or a lease option.
Sure.
And it's called a rent credit program. And it's simply, it works just like frequent flyer miles would work on an airline, to where you can use those points to buy a flight, but you surely can't use them for anything else. You can't redeem them for the cash value or anything like that. So we use a similar program to that. It works very similar in nature to a rent to own. And they can achieve the same thing, but it's not binding us by that SAFE Act or Dodd-Frank. We're not basically becoming non-compliant because of it. So yeah, we try to get rid of those homes as fast as possible. Again, we have found that the management intensity, if you take we've got a few communities that are fairly large that we own none of the homes in them, none of the trailers are ours, and we've got a 150 space community that owns 0 units. We have a manager there, and that person really is part-time. They probably work about, maybe about 20 hours a week. And then we have another community that's 60 lots, and we own 40 of the trailers in it. And we have 2 full-time people that have to run that show. And so, the management intensity from that smaller park, which is a third of the size, is much greater than that of the larger.
Okay, now, but to be fair, you also got 60 tenants paying you a lot more rent than your lot rent.
Sure.
So.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I guess it's more from a scaling standpoint than anything else, because we still have to oversee those managers. And so from we're a small operation here at our home office. And so, but we still have to oversee those managers. And we could essentially oversee 3,000 lots if we didn't own anything, whereas we might only be able to oversee 600 rental units if we owned every single one of the trailers without having to actually grow our internal infrastructure here, if that makes sense.
I got it.
So it's really just a choice than anything else. I mean, we like the simpler approach.
I assume that you have some training that you do. Do you teach people mobile home parks?
We do. Yeah, we created an academy a few years back, and also created a podcast that that's all we talk about is mobile home park investing. So we've been doing that for a couple of years now, and it's basically our business model in a box. I mean, it's exactly everything we do from A to Z, from how we find parks. We do a lot of direct to owner marketing, how we utilize brokers, how we build a pitch deck to attract lenders, how we raise our private capital, what our structure looks like. So we teach all that.
Well, so you do a boot camp on it, you mean?
It's not a boot camp; it's an online training.
No, not online. No, so your training is just online, not in person.
We don't do a physical boot camp. No, that's right. We do not do a physical boot camp.
Well, perhaps you should. I know somebody that's pretty good at that. So
I can recall.
So do you have a relationship with some of your students who send you deals?
We do. And I tell you that we've done a few deals with students, but it surely is not the primary source of the deals that we've taken down over the years. I guess what I have found is that a lot of the deals that come in from students are typically fairly smaller deals. They haven't reset their mindset of looking at larger opportunities. They kind of pigeonhole themselves into very small, cheap deals that might not be in great markets. So a lot of the things that come in aren't necessarily what would work for us today. But even then, we've partnered on a few deals, or we'll, pass that recommendation or that referral on to someone else and try to create a partnership out of it for someone else.
I wasn't really referring to partnerships. I was just referring to referral fees. And if they're sending you all the small stuff, that just means you're not training them well enough, especially when they're not going to be writing any checks. All right. So how do you go about finding these things?
We just paid a $75,000 referral fee about 3 weeks ago on the deal that was brought.
Nice.
So it was probably one of the, it was a good one for that guy too. So it was a $1.8 million deal, and he made $75,000 on it. And actually, we paid 1.75, and it was 1.825 with his referral fee, and the park appraised at closing for 2.3. So had a little bit of equity built in there right out of the gate. And, worked for everyone.
Okay. Well, this is your last question. How you go about finding these parks? What sources do you use?
So we use a lot of direct owner marketing. It's a lot of tactics that I used to use back when we were buying single family homes. A lot of things that I learned from you, Ron, way back when. And we would kind of evolve that into the mobile home park space. We also use those techniques to, buy apartments back in the day. And so we do a lot of direct mail. We have a full-time person in our office that does outbound cold calling, literally in our Florida-based office. So we touch them as many times as possible on a given basis. So once a month, we're either sending them a piece of mail or we're picking up the phone and calling them. And in addition to just going direct to owner, we also work with brokers. But last year we bought 9 communities, and 8 of those were a direct result of our own initiative. So us actually going direct to the owner. Only 1 came through a broker. And what I've found is that especially in today's where we're at in the real estate cycle, everyone's chasing yield. Everyone, there's always someone out there willing to pay more than you or I, Ron, for a deal, right? There's always someone who's willing to pay just a little bit more. And I don't want to be competing against those people. And so typically once it gets into the hand of the broker, and I love brokers dearly, I understand their place in the world. But when it gets in their hands, it's their fiduciary responsibility to get the highest and best price for their seller. And they'll put it out to the market. And now we're competing against everyone and their brother.
Okay. I'm going to do the counterpoint on that. Remember, we're buying, or I'd be buying properties and you turned around, and that takes a lot of the competition out of the loop right there because they're looking to buy for hedge funds and the like that just want stabilized properties. But I found that working with commercial brokers is a whole lot different than working residential. Commercial brokers get it. They understand what's got to happen to make these things work. They get owner financing and all of that. I know they got to get the highest price, but you and I both know how that goes. They also want a sale and a commission check too. So anyway, enough on that.
I think that's a lot where like the track record comes in as well. I think it's once you got a little bit of track record, you get the broker to go to bat for you. They just want to know that they'll get a commission check, that the damn thing's going to close, and that if they bring you a deal, like you better get that thing closed and not back out and waste their time. Yeah.
Well, I get it. All right, so you're going to give our listeners something. What is that something, and how do they get it?
Yeah, so I wrote a free ebook about a year and a half ago, and basically sat down with one of my partners, and we came up with, we kept numbering the biggest mistakes we saw new guys getting to the mobile home parks business, the mistakes they made, and ultimately came up with 21. That's where we ended up, and so we wrote a book called The 21 Biggest Mistakes New Park Investors Make and How to Avoid Them, and they can find that ebook and download a copy of it by going to the Mentor Podcast /mobile park. And then again, that's the mentorpodcast.com/mobile park.
Mobile park. Okay. And if you listen to this, I would assume you'd want that. So go get it. And if you're looking for my stuff, I'm all over the place. My main site is ronlegrand.com. That's LEGRAND. Don't forget to sign up for this Mentor podcast so that we can notify you every Wednesday so you don't forget it. But all of them are posted on the site. All right. Well, Kevin, you got any final brilliant words for our listeners here today before we get off this?
No, I think the only thing I would say is, whether it be mobile home parks or apartments or whatever, your listeners decide they want to go after, it's just pick something and focus, right? And just move towards it and take a lot of action and really give yourself the time necessary to kind of master that craft. I mean, you're not going to be an expert overnight. It's going to take time. Mm-hmm. So again, if it's mobile home parks, just know you're going to set aside some time. It could be a year, it could be 18 months. Buy a community, get in there, get your hands dirty, and know you're going to make mistakes, and just try to always find the lesson that's buried inside that mistake, and just make sure you don't make it a second time around.
Well, that's good advice, and I got to tell you, you've come a long ways in 6 years. So I got to hand it to you. You're not normal. You know that. You're weird, right?
Just like you, Ron.
Okay. Because you're a real action taker, not an excuse maker. So it's fun talking to folks like you. Well, anyway, I appreciate you taking the time to spend with our group today. And I'm sure we're going to be talking much more in the future. In fact, I think you're going to be interviewing me on an upcoming podcast for yourself, aren't you?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Right.
I get to put you on the spot.
All right, there you go. All right, well, thank you all for listening, and thank you, Kevin, for your time, and we'll see you on the next Mentor Podcast.
That's all for this edition of the Mentor Podcast. To connect with Ron and learn how you can attain financial freedom, as well as up-to-date strategies to grow and protect your wealth based on today's discussion, go to www.connectwiththementor.com.